So thank you for having me here. I'm going to be talking about games and artificial intelligence. How many people here have played a game today? Put your hands up high, I need to see that. How many people have played a game today? Okay, all of you who have not played, so if you have played a game, put your hands down. The rest of you who say you haven't played a game today, I don't believe you. Okay, so if you said you didn't play a game today, how did you get here? Did you walk here? How many of you drove here? Okay, I can get a few people who said they haven't played a game who said they drove here. So for those people, I can tell you that you've actually probably played a game. Okay, so let me give you a game that you played. You've probably heard of the game after I tell you about it. It's actually called the parking game. If that's not a name you know, then you might have heard it as the I bet there's a closer space game. Or sometimes it's called So yeah, you probably heard it on one of these names. But let me go through how the game works. Let's get some lights. Thank you. I'm always the lights go down because the parking game with no lights is really hard. Okay. Alright, so now we can see we have a parking lot, and you're trying to figure out how you can park to be as close to CSIS as you can. So you're that blue car there, and here we begin playing the parking game, and we drive down a lane, and we're moving along. Let's try that again. We're moving along, and of course, we reach a point where we have a decision. There's a spot on the left that I can pull into, and this is what makes a game. Right? So when I say have you played a game, I really just meant, did you make any choices today at all? Because if so, then you in fact play a game. So right now, the car has a choice. Do I pull into this spot, or do I look for a closer space? Right? So they have to reason through, well, what are the options? What are the possible outcomes, and what happens next? But of course, we know what's going to happen in this moment. We're going to keep moving. Because of course, I bet there's a closer space. And so we keep driving along, and then maybe we get another choice. There's a spot on the right. But maybe we think, no, I could probably get right up beside. I bet you there's a spot right there. And we keep driving, and then we get some disappointment. Okay, that didn't really work out. But the game's not even over yet, because now I can figure out what to do. I can drive all the way back around and try to get into that space again that I passed, right? But the problem with that is that there's other people who are driving their cars too, and they might be coming into the parking lot, and they might pull into that space. Maybe I saw a space, just one spot over. Maybe I should go over that lane over there. Because I think there's a space over there, and I should try that. But of course, there could be like a motorcycle. So that might not have been a space, I can't quite tell, and I have some uncertainty about where the spaces are and where other people might be driving. Okay, so this is a game, and so when I put it in that case, probably all of you have now played games today. Now, but that isn't what we usually think of when we think of games, right? When we think of games, we think of things like this. We think of like really old games. We think of boring games. We think of games that are only suitable for children, right? We think of that we're serious people. We have serious jobs, we do serious things, and games are really they're the things that we occupy our children's time with so they don't bother us. Which almost always backfires because then they want to play the game with us. And then that didn't work at all. But still, we often think about games like that. And even if we think about modern games, they're still, we always usually think of them as a more children's activity, as opposed to the serious business that adults take care of. But this really doesn't even make sense. And we kind of know this doesn't make sense. There's been recent studies that we've seen that show that video games can actually help older adults maintain their cognitive control for longer period of times. It improves short-term memory and in terms of the ability to actually deal with multiple tasks at once. And of course, the whole reason why we have our children play games is not to get them out of our hair typically. It's because this is where they learn so much. Right? Like, think about what you can learn from sitting down and playing a game. We can learn everything from colors, numbers, and pattern matching. Right? There's a whole slew of early games where our children learn about basic understanding of matching patterns, finding colors, understanding numbers, counting. Now there's a whole slew of games that now add in decisions where we're now making choices. And we have to learn that our actions have effects on the world. We have to learn that we can plan to have certain effects on the world. I can choose to take actions to achieve particular goals. And some of these might even be long-term. I have to understand that I can take long-term effects on the world. As games get more complicated, we realize they need some strategic thinking, they require problem solving, and then of course there are usually other players involved in the game. So now we need social skills, and we need cooperation. We need to figure out how are we going to be a good winner in cases where we win, or not be a sore loser. And so games allow us to learn all of these things. But they do so in a place where failure has very small consequences. And that's the key thing in games. So unlike the serious activities that we participate in, where if we make a mistake, we might not find out for 5 years, and when we do find out, someone might die. Right? That's the reality of the serious activities that we often engage in, especially if you're a doctor. But even if you're not, even if you're an engineer and you build a bridge, or if you're in other public policy areas and you make poor choices, we have large consequences, and we don't find out right away. And contrast that with games, where we find out within a few hours what the effect of our choices were, and the consequences are, I lost the game, and I can move on and play. Okay, so games then, and the reason we have our children play them, and the purpose they serve, is that they're a proving ground. They're a chance to develop all of these skills in a place where there's low amount degree of consequences, and we get fast feedback on how good our choices are. Now, this talk isn't really about our kids or about even us as adults. This talk is going to be about artificial intelligence. And if we're going to deal with artificial intelligence, then we need to do all of these problems. That's the task in front of us, is how can we get machines that can do things like understand colors and pattern matching and numbers? How can we get machines that can understand the effects of their actions, take choices, do long-term planning, do strategic thinking, decision-making, problem-solving, cooperate with others, cooperate with us humans, cooperate with other artificial intelligences, and how can we give them good social skills? We want to do all these things. And so this is why games and AI have been so integrally connected. From the very beginning of artificial intelligence, really the very, very beginning of computer science, games were right in the initial conception. When people were building computers, one of the first things they thought to do with them, sometimes before they built the computer, was to actually write a chess program. And in fact, Alan Turing wrote a chess program before he had a machine to run it on. He manually executed his program himself, so he could run it against somebody else and find out how well it would. And so that's often what we think of when we think of AI and games, is we actually think of chess. And have it already right off the bat, as the very conception of games and AI, Thomas brought up, of course, we think about chess playing programs. They were often the pinnacle of, if we could just get AI to do chess, then there would be no other challenges in front of us. Now that actually happened in 1997. We had Deep Blue defeated Garry Kasparov, first time that a human had beat a top-level chess player. And yet, we didn't solve all the problems. There still seems to be much ahead of AI. But we have that milestone that's very memorable, but this isn't the only milestone. And we can look at other games and see where we've come along historically and where we're going to be. Now, often when we look at games, one way to measure how hard a game is by how big the game is. And what I mean by how big a game is how many different decisions might you have to make in the game. If you think about a game like tic-tac-toe, there's just not that many decisions to make. Right? There's only, you could be at the very first decision of the game, and then after that you're going to respond to like 3 different decisions, and like the sort of space of possible choices you have to make is quite small. In a game like chess, that number is like 10 to the 47. That's how many decision points there are in the game, how many spaces that you could find yourself in where you would have to make an informed choice. That number is very large, but it's not the largest game that humans have looked at or computers have looked at. There's smaller games, for example, checkers, you can see about as typically being a little bit easier, and in fact it is a smaller game. It has about 10 to the 18 possible decision points you can find yourself in. And because of that, computers could actually handle it sooner. So the first computer to beat a human at any game, to achieve world championship level, was Chinook, which defeated Marion Tinsley in 1994, 3 years before we did so at chess. And this was work that was done by Dr. Jonathan Schaefer here at the University of Alberta. And then in 2007, we outright solved checkers. In other words, we have a perfect player in the game of checkers. Doesn't matter who it sits down and plays against, it cannot possibly lose. It can guarantee that at worst it just ends in a tie. Now there are bigger games too. So I don't know if you saw the news in March, just a few months ago. So the game of Go has 10 to the 171 possible states. That's much, much bigger than like the number of atoms in the universe. In 2016, this year, AlphaGo, a program developed at Google DeepMind, defeated Lee Sedol, one of the top top Go players in the world. This was thought to be at least 20 years ago. And it happened this year. Now, I should point out actually that much like the Schmidt results, the AlphaGo, while being done at Google, what was it? It was 3 of the first 4 authors of the paper were actually trained in Canada. And so much of the AI results I'm actually going to talk about today, and much of what has happened, has actually been a lot of Canadian hands all over. Okay, with these successes though, that's actually not what I want to talk about. I actually don't want to talk about these kinds of games. These kinds of games all have a particular property to them. And the kind of games that I'm interested in are things like poker. So the difference between the games on the left and the games I'm going to show on the right is that the games on the left have no real uncertainty about what's going on in the game. You know every detail about the current position of the world before you make your move. It's right there on the board, shown to everyone. Nobody has any secret information. No one has any side information. There's nothing to discover apart from who's going to win the game as we go. Poker, if we want to think about it in size, we can do the same thing. And poker has lots of variants. The smallest variant played by humans has 10 to the 18 game states in it. A larger variant played by humans can get upwards as large as Go, and maybe even larger than that if you go to multiplayer. The parking game is another game where you don't have all the information before you make your choice. When you pull up and you see that there's a spot empty, you don't know what is in the future. You don't know if there are future spots available, and when you see other people circling, you're not sure how they're going to behave or what they know about how crowded or uncrowded the parking lot is. Oh, and by the way, I counted up, it has 10 to the 56. Then there's like video games. In video games, if you try to count out how many decision points, I don't even know where to begin. Like, there's an infinite number of screens that you could essentially present to somebody as part of a video game. And yet we can sit down and play video games quite easily. A game I've never seen before, no one has to tell me how to play. And without too much trouble, within an hour, I sort of roughly have some idea of how the game works. Right? How can we get computers to the point where they can sit down with a video game they don't know about and figure out how the game works? Okay, so the specific, I want to talk about 3 projects on that right-hand side. And the 3 I'm going to talk about are poker, I'm going to talk about video games, and then because it's Canada, I'm going to talk about curling. Because that makes sense. But curling is also one of these games as well, too, that there's uncertainty in how you can deliver your shot, right? If I don't really know how well I'm going to be able to execute the shot in front of me. And so it has challenges unlike you would see in games like chess and checkers. It also turns out that I have research projects built around all 3 of these games, and so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, but I've already alluded to what the core issue is with these games on the right as opposed to the games on the left, and that is they deal with uncertainty. And the other thing that differs about what the games on the right and the games on the left is the games on the right are much more like our real-world problems. If we want to get machines to deal with the complexities that we face in our games, they're going to involve massive amounts of uncertainty. And we are surprisingly good as humans at dealing with and being able to make decisions in the face of massive amounts of uncertainty. And so there's lots of different uncertainty-like questions, like what does the future hold? What would actually happen if I do this? Often it's not for certain that if I pick up my pawn and move 2 spaces forward, I know exactly what's going to come out. In chess, I know exactly what happens. But in other games, I don't really know. If I were to call the bet and cards get flipped over in a game of poker, I don't know what cards will be flipped over. And I'm not certain what's going to happen as I move forward and see empty or non-empty spots in the card. What don't I know? Is there information in the game or in the world that I wish I knew to be able to make my decision? And what do others know? Maybe there are others acting in the world and they know information that maybe they don't know things I know. Maybe they know things I don't know. Maybe I can infer things I don't know from watching what they do. And these are things, again, we all sort of deal with as we go about our day. And then, of course, what will others do? What choices are they going to make? And what are they trying to achieve? All these forms of uncertainty, the thing about them is we can actually sort of draw them out in a sort of mathematical way. Now, this is a public talk. I think I have one math symbol on the slides, and it involves the infinity symbol. So I'm not going to draw anything really mathematical here, but I want to sort of map out that we can actually encode uncertainty in a sort of formal way. So here's a game. This is going to be a very simple game we'll build up. And remember what I said a game is. It's just I have some decision, right? So here's a game, and I am that blue square, and I have to decide, do I go to the left or do I go to the right? That's my decision. Now, in order to make that decision, I have to think about what are going to be the outcomes of that decision. So one possibility is maybe if I go to the right, there might be some random chance event. Something might happen. It might be a deal of the cards or a roll of the dice, or there might be, I will find that the spot was empty in front of me or it wasn't. But there's some random chance that's outside of my control. And that's what's going to be marked with this green circle. I can't control how that outcome occurs. And so if I'm going to understand my decision, should I go left or right, I have to actually understand what happens when I hit these random chances. And they involve one source of uncertainty. Now there's more uncertainty than that. Maybe after I go to the right and chance has some effect, maybe I get to act again. But maybe after that, maybe someone else gets to act. Or maybe if I go to the left, there's another player that's going to make some choice. And now if I'm going to try to figure out should I go left or should I go right, I have to understand if I go left, well, what is the yellow player going to do? Are they going to go left or are they going to go right? Because that might affect what my ultimate outcome of this choice is. So I have another source of uncertainty, which is the actions of the other participants. And so I can, again, draw them out in this sort of diagrammatic way. There's the last form of uncertainty is a little bit harder to see, and it's because it involves the fact that the whole situation I find myself in doesn't have to be the only one I could have found myself. The whole world kind of could have come out in a different way. And it might have been, while I find myself here, it also could have been that the world could have come out here and I would have found myself in this position. Maybe, in fact, actually, that is in fact the case. One of those two things happens, and maybe I don't know which one it is. This is where I don't have full information to make my choices. So in the game of poker, I might not be able to separate these two states, these two possible worlds, because they differ on what cards the other player is. And yet I have to make a decision that's going to work well, whether I'm in this state of the world or whether I'm in this state of the world. And my decision has to work in both those cases, because I can't tell. We call that an information set, and this is the sort of third type of uncertainty that we have, which is missing information content. Now the cool thing is once we diagram this out, and we have this sort of formal model, we actually know how to deal with these kinds of uncertainties, and we can build intelligent systems that can actually make really good choices as long as we can diagram things. And in fact, we can solve very large diagrams of this form. So this is tiny. You could probably, if you worked at it and build up a little bit of mathematics, you could solve this by hand on a piece of paper. On the other hand, we want to solve really big games. I gave you big numbers. Like what if instead of having like 7 nodes in that diagram, there's 10 to the 18 nodes in the diagram. So a million nodes. Sorry, a billion nodes. I can do my math. Then it would be much harder. But in fact, in the last 5 to 10 years, we've made huge strides in the size of these diagrams we've been able to solve. And that's been what a lot of my research has been about. So in the last 10 years, we've gone from being able to solve games, these diagrams that have about 1 million nodes in them, to now being able to solve diagrams with 10 to the 13 nodes. So much larger than where we came from before. And what that's meant is that we can actually make good decisions in really hard problems. So let's take the space of poker. Poker is one of these games we can exactly write out that diagram. It might be really big, you wouldn't want to draw it out, but it exists. And so we can actually have a computer sort of reason about it. And so in 2007, when we first made strides to being able to solve these complex problems, we actually decided we thought we were close to taking on top human players. Now this was the game of heads up, limit, hold'em, which if you're a poker player, you'll know what that is, and if you're not a poker player, it doesn't matter. So this is the smallest variant of poker that humans play, and we took on 2 professional players, Phil Lock and Ali Islami, in 2007, and we actually had 4 matches. We won 1 of them, but we lost 2, and the 4th one was a draw. So we ended up sort of losing the overall competition. But we were close. We were really just excited that we were able to be competitive with them. We then had a rematch in 2008. We went out against even stronger competition in the second managing championship. And this time we actually came out ahead. So we improved our programs during that time, and we actually won 3 matches, lost 2, and drew the last one. And this is the first time a computer had beaten any humans at a meaningful competition at a game like poker. Now, Thomas alluded to a result that was much more recent about solving the game. So this only said that in about 2008, we were better than humans at making decisions in such complex spaces like a game like poker. But that doesn't mean that humans can't get better. In fact, they did. Humans are actually getting, it's one of the few games where maybe it's because it's more new, humans are actually getting better at a very rapid rate. And so the degree that we would win in 2008, we were play the same program now against top players, I'm not even sure we'd be ahead. So how can we say we're really ahead? How do we build something that sort of can't be beaten? And it turns out that we can actually do that. We can actually flat out solve things. So we had a paper that appeared in Science last January where we actually got to declare that heads-up limit hold'em, the smallest variant that humans play, is solved. What does that mean? It means that I have a program that if you were to sit down and play against it, that you would not be able to win money against it. So it can't guarantee that it wins money against you. Maybe you're also a perfect player yourself, and then you end up in a tie in the long run. But in a shorter, so given if we play enough hands, we're guaranteed to at least not lose. And then if you make mistakes, which humans always do, then the computer will end up being good. So of course we got a ton of publicity for this. It was a pretty exciting story. The one thing I want to point out, though, at the bottom here is this one bizarre headline that was computers are learning how to treat illnesses by playing poker and Atari. Which is actually was true. This was a story that wasn't just entirely made up. So I want to tell you how these two things actually connect together. How the heck there's a headline. Because maybe up to this point, you've sort of bought the, okay, I guess in a generic sense, I play games when I go to work. But that doesn't count. Like, it doesn't matter that you're able to solve poker problems or affecting the problems I care about. So let me actually try to much more concretely connect them together. And so the first place I want to start with is to go very, very far away from poker and then surprise you when I pull them back together. Okay, so what we're going to do is imagine that I'm a doctor. And so my job is I have a patient who arrives. My patient is represented by this star right here, and I have to recommend a treatment policy to this patient. They're suffering from something. We've been working with some diabetologists at the University of Alberta hospitals, and so I'll use diabetes as an example. So I need to make a treatment recommendation about how much insulin they should inject, and what schedule, and so on and so forth, for them to manage their diabetes. Now the problem is, I don't have all the information I want to know about this patient who comes in. I have some uncertainty about exactly how this patient will respond to different treatment options. I have some uncertainty about how their metabolism might change over the next year, or how much their exercise regime might change, or their eating habits. There's all sorts of things that could change and things I don't know. And so in fact, I'm not really making a recommendation to this patient. There's really many different sort of patients this patient could be. There's lots of different ways they could respond, and these are all different worlds I could find myself in as I make this recommendation. In fact, it's sort of a continuous space of possible patients, and I'm not certain for certain which one I have. And I'm going to make a recommendation that's going to be robust to that uncertainty. It's going to be able to handle it. So one way to think about that is what I could do is I could take one of these possible patients that I could be making a recommendation to, and I could then ask, oh, here's how good this treatment policy that I'm about to recommend is, if that was in fact the patient that they were. So the entire the green bar is meant to be they would respond very well to the treatment. I can then think, well, maybe that's not the patient I'm dealing with. Maybe maybe they have some slightly different genetic history, which means they won't respond that well. And so they could respond in a different way. I can take all these different samples of patients and I can just line them up and I can see how well they do against my policy that I'm thinking about recommending. And in fact, computer science and AI has an answer after we do this step. It's the traditional answer is we take the average. We say, on average, how well will my treatment policy perform? And I get some number. And then my goal is to find a treatment policy that will sort of do well on average. But this has a slight problem, and that is that maybe this is the patient that I'm actually dealing with. And so, while it might make sense that we try to maximize the average in some sense, an individual patient might not be so happy with that if it turns out that they're not the average patient. So what we'd like to do is maybe we'd like to care about, I don't want any of the worst, the bad cases to be too bad. So we could do something, like we could say, well, let's order them, figure out here's all the different ways the outcomes could go. Maybe I want to make sure that the worst case isn't so bad. Find me a treatment policy that in the worst case does okay. That can often be pessimistic, so maybe I don't want to do that. But I can even do something like, find me a treatment policy that in the bad cases, so the bottom half of the cases, it does still okay there. And so there's a number of ways that I can think about this. All of these go under these sort of something called robustness measures in the formal way of thinking about this problem. But here's what I want to do. I want to connect that thinking about robustness and say, in fact, when a doctor solves that, when they think about making a policy recommendation that will be robust to their uncertainty, they are in fact playing a game. And so all of those ways of thinking about robustness correspond to, in fact, the following game. The game looks like this. Chance, this sort of, it's not a real player, but there's going to be this chance player that is going to randomly select a set of patients that you might have to deal with. After chance randomly selects a set of patients, there's going to be an adversary. Again, this adversary doesn't actually exist, but we can imagine it here. And the adversary is going to select a subset, maybe half. Then chance is going to pick one of those patients, and then I finally, as a doctor, get to now recommend my treatment policy. Here it is, go execute my treatment policy, with the one catch that I don't actually know anything that happened before this. I don't know what chance chose as a subset of patients. I don't know what the adversary chose me as the bad patients I'm going to have to deal with, nor do I know what patient I'm actually dealing with. And it turns out solving this problem is identical to finding a robust policy in the traditional framework. The other thing is this diagrammatic form has exactly the same diagrammatic form that we have in poker problems, including having uncertain, imperfect information about not knowing what cards were dealt is effectively not knowing what patient we're dealing with. And so we can actually just straight up apply the computer poker research group's ideas to exactly this problem, and we can produce sort of optimal policies under the goal that you want to be robust to uncertainty. Okay, so let's go back to games, because they're more fun. So that's a little bit of the poker work and where we bump to and being able to solve really large games, but there's other problems that are also hard that we can't quite write down in that pretty picture that I've been drawing these diagrams of. So one such problem is curling. So here, the sport of curling, I assume everyone in the audience knows, you slide rocks on ice, people vigorously sweep in front of you. Yeah, anyway, you know all this. Okay, so curling is tricky. And curling is tricky for a couple of reasons, but let me give you two particular challenges for artificial intelligence as it comes to the sport of curling. And one problem is that small changes in the circumstances matter a great deal. So this was a particular end from the 2010 Olympics, the Canadian women's gold medal game. Canada's in yellow and Sweden's in red. And Sweden is about to shoot here. I think it's the 7th end. It's the beginning of the skip stones, I think. But Sweden's about to shoot. And they're going to try to take a shot where they're going to try to, as you can see here, Sweden is actually, like, they want to get rid of these two rocks right here to try to score more points. And they're actually going to try to come down, hit on the inside of this yellow rock, to push this one out and then split them off. And then they would be sitting 2 after that shot. And so the actual result of their shot is this. So they actually got rid of one of those red rocks, but they pushed the other one off to the side. And so it looks like maybe they kind of did what they wanted to do. Maybe that should have been a successful shot, or is it a successful shot? Actually, that's the problem. Like, I can't even look as maybe, I think there are people in the audience who could look at this and answer, was that a successful shot, or was that not a successful shot? But actually answering that question is one of the challenges. And it turns out that this was not a great shot, and it's because if you look at this red rock, the Swedish rock, their own rock, they actually knocked it over about like a quarter of a rock to the inside. And it turns out that's really important because this rock was entirely covered by this guard, and now it's not. And on the next shot, Canada wins. And now they're in. Okay, so, but it's hard to tell that. That small change, moving a rock over just a little bit, has a world of difference about how this game is going to play. And what that creates a problem in our diagrams is because when I take a shot, so when I make an action, there's a whole myriad of possibilities of how that could come out. Sweden didn't try to bump their rock over, it was just one of the chance outcomes that could occur. And the problem is, there's an infinite number of them. There's an infinite number of ways the rocks can ricochet off of each other and move into slightly different positions. And so I can't really draw it out as these forms where I have these lines going between them because there's an infinite number of outcomes. And to make matters worse, there's an infinite number of decisions that my opponent could respond because there's any number of shots they can make. Now you might think that there's a finite number, like they're going to do a hit or they're going to do a hit and roll, but there's an infinite number of ways they could roll, in which direction and how far. Okay, so that's the challenge if we're going to try to understand it. So let me give you an idea of one thing we can try to understand to the sport of curling that will give you a picture of maybe how AI begins to think about this sort of level of complex problems. So there is something in the sport of curling that is finite, that is countable, that there's just a fixed number of things. And that is the number of positions you can find yourself in a game where the end is over. So once the end ends, right, we clean up all the rocks. Now all that matters for the sort of state of the game is what's the score difference, who has the hammer, and how many ends are left. Right? That defines everything. And so each one of these circles is meant to say, that's one possible state of the game once we've cleaned all the rocks off the sheet. Now from that, we can actually use data. We can go we took 20,000 curling games of high-level competition, and we can actually answer questions like, let's suppose you get into the 10th end, and the game is tied. What's the distribution over outcomes is likely to come out of it? Right? And we'll get some probabilities. And so here I've just darkened the lines. The more likely the outcome is, the more darker the arrow is. So it's likely that the team with the hammer would score 1 point, but it's also possible they'll score 2, or there's probably a very small possibility that it would be a blank, but then there's some probabilities that they can steal the other team. So I have these sort of probabilities, and I can then split up all the states, because now I've reached a game over state. I can split up all the states into, these are states that I've won, and these are states that I've lost. And now from that, I can actually answer, given top-level curling play, what's the probability that if we were, say, tied going to the final end, that the team with the hammer would actually win? Okay, so that's great when I'm in the final end, but now I can just keep backing this up. I can do the same thing for one end away from the final end. So for the 9th end, then now I can ask the question, well, I know if I was up by 1, I know there's a distribution over likely outcomes of what states I've reached to in the 10th end, and so then I know the probabilities of winning in each of those places. And so I can just back up the probabilities. And I can now have this table that tells me, given the score differential, who has the hammer, and how many ends are left to play, what's the probability of either side? Now from that, we can already do something kind of cool. We can actually look at that Sweden versus Canada gold medal game from 2010, and we can actually look at the game and say after every end, what was the probability that each side would win? So here, if this line ever gets all the way to the top, it means that the system is convinced that Sweden has a 100% chance of winning the game from here, probably because they just shook hands. If it ever gets to the bottom, then Canada's guaranteed. And so we can see that in that 7th end, which I was showing you, something happened. Because Sweden actually had a big advantage. They were going to win with approximately 75% probability, and then after the 7th end, it was down to under 50%. So something happened. Was it that shot that I just showed you? Was it a different shot? Like, where did it happen? We still can't quite answer. But that's what we've been trying to deal with in the computer curling research group, is could we answer that question? Could we actually say who's responsible for winning and losing a game? Which shots actually matter? And so one way to do that is we can actually just start simulating things. So that's what we do. We have a physics simulator of rocks traveling on ice. We have AI systems that will try to attempt to make shots in this game. We have a model of how human skill level is in this game and how accurately humans can actually deliver the rocks that they want to deliver. And so what we can do is just have 2 AI players play against each other, thousands and thousands of games from a particular position, and answer what's the probability that Red's going to win from here if the AI system was going to play the game. Now the cool thing of that is that I can turn that previous graph I just showed you into this graph. This is now going shot by shot. What's the probability that Sweden or Canada is going to win after every single shot? So when you see this go way up or way down, that means that somebody made a mistake. Right? So that shot that I was trying to show you from the 7th end, cursor here, is actually this drop right there. Was what that drop was. It wasn't a killer problem for Sweden, although they did miss their shot that would have pulled them out and saved the pain of this end, and that's what that final drop is from here all the way down. So about a third, or maybe not even quite that, about a quarter of their mistake on that end didn't come from the shot I showed you, but there was a much bigger mistake at the end of the and now we can start to tease those things around. Now, of course, when you look at it this way, you see actually, in fact, the system actually did get to the point that it was convinced that Canada would win the game, like everybody else who was watching. But it didn't turn out that way. So one of the things we're hoping to do with this is I would actually like to, maybe it's because poker on TV has this property, but I would like to be able to say that next time you watch the Olympics, you're going to see win probability sitting beside the 2 teams, answering what's the probability each team will win from. But we can actually even help players get better. So, like, for example, there's a question, should you blank, if you've curled it all, should you blank the first end or should you just take 1? It's pretty common among high-level teams that they actually blank the first 10, but according to all the tables, they're giving up a little under 3% in their winning probability by doing that. It's better to actually just take it. Okay, so let me move away from curling to the last one I want to talk about, which is video games. So video games are, of course, like a huge industry, but they're also a fascinating problem for artificial intelligence. Because we are, in fact, not just good at them in some individual sense, but we're good at them in some very general sense. So there are hundreds of thousands of video games that have been made, and we as humans can play all of them, right? Even ones that you're like, oh, I have no idea what's going on in this game. If you sat down to work at it, you would be able to figure it out. So I've actually even done tests. I've actually had my kids when they were 6. I sat them down and had them play through 50 different Atari 2600 games without giving them any instruction or telling them what was going on, just to see, can you figure these games out? Now, so why Atari 2600? So the games I'm showing you here are all from this console that was built in 1977. It's the first console that actually allowed you to plug cartridges in. So up until that point, all of the game consoles that you could bring in your home were like Pong. They played Pong and that was it. But the Atari 2600 allowed anyone to make games, and so then anyone did. And there were over 500 games made for the Atari 2600. Now the cool thing from an AI point of view is all of these games are really primitive. Right? We look at them now and they look quaint and old, and I mean maybe they're retro, in fact they're back in style in the modern game world, but the point is that they're all very simple because the hardware that ran them had to be very simple. It was a very, very small computer that could play. But at the same time, we as humans found them interesting. And so they serve a really great purpose for us building AI, because we know that humans could play these myriad of games that were all very different. But we also know that they're not so complex that if we solve these, we might as well be having cars drive themselves, which is what we're working towards in the bigger picture. So can we do these kinds of problems? Now we're right out of diagramming out the uncertainties that exist. There's no way we're going to draw a little picture that says, here's the distribution over screens that you might see next, or here's how the game's going to work. There's no way I would be able to write that. But that doesn't mean we can't get AI systems that can actually play these games. And typically the way we do it now is we have them learn to play the games. They actually just, through trial and error, will execute playing the game, trying to figure out what accumulates score and what doesn't accumulate. Now, this what's being shown here is actually 2 agents playing. One of them is a computer agent controlled by AI, and the other one's a human agent. Which one do you think is which? Which one's the human? Yeah, the one on the right is pretty clearly a human, mainly because the computer, no one would wiggle the joystick in that fashion. At the same time, though, this is actually one of the games that the computer does very well at. Notice the human is dead. The computer will actually continue to go on. Now, the human currently has more points, but the computer will go on and actually end up getting a higher score. It turns out that it's actually quite effective to continue to take shots back and forth, even though it would be much more difficult for a human to actually pull that off. And so the computer actually plays slightly erratically, but can actually do this game well. Now, but what our interest in looking at video games is not to look at one game and declare anything interesting about it. What I would like to be able to do is have one AI system that can play all of those games, all of them. I never tell them about any of them ahead of time. It doesn't know what game it's going to play. It's never seen it before. It just sits down, it sees visual input, and it figures out how to play. And that's the challenge that video games give to us. But it's a lovely challenge because it means it both is connected to what we as humans do as intelligent beings, but also we have a great way of evaluating how good our systems are. I can just get 50 new games that it's never seen before and say, now play those and see if you can figure them out. Now, what does it take to be able to play games like this? I mentioned that I actually got my kids to sit down and play Atari 2600 games. So this is a video of my son playing through some of the games. And I want to use this to sort of say, what aspects of intelligence do you need to be able to play these games? The first one, you actually notice this is a very unusual game. It's a little bit tricky to figure out what's actually going on in the game. But what you actually need to do is you actually need to sort of explore the world to understand. The way to actually do well in this game is you have to go down there. Those are moving platforms. You can't quite tell these things right here that are shaking. They're actually something you land on, they roll you off the edge. So you have to be really careful. You have to sort of drop down into them, hop over, get a key, get to the door. It's sort of this long-term complicated problem. But what my son had to do was explore what effects does its actions have on the world. What does the button do? What are those moving platforms? So here's the version of hockey that was available on the 2600. My son was super excited when he was playing this game. So it lasts 3 minutes long, and he was really, really happy because he was up. Well, he thought he was winning by 17 points to nothing because he thought he was yellow. But it turns out he was blue. He never did that the whole time. It's not like he's like, oh crap, I'm blue. No, he just was happy. It's actually funny though. The reason that this happens is because you can actually switch. The game switches which of the two players you're actually controlling based on sort of who's closer to the puck, kind of. And so it's actually kind of hard to figure out what on the screen you can actually control. And so that actually is a little bit of a challenge. And you couple that with, well, when it made sense for yellow to shoot, he pressed the button, and then of course the opponent actually shot too, and then it all made sense. It was getting worse with what the right thing was. But so that's the other thing. We have to, when we play these games, we have to figure out what do we control in these games. I'm going to sort of zoom ahead and show you one more game, which is the game of freeways. This is the game of chicken crossing the road. I don't know why. So the goal here is to just move that chicken on the left up across the road while avoiding cars. So again, my son has to figure out what do I control here. So he figures out he controls the chicken and sort of figures out very quickly what he's trying to do. He gets points when he crosses the road. But actually, after he gets up at this point right now, he actually just starts holding the up button on the joystick. And he's never going to let go for the remainder of the game. And so, in some sense, he knows he's slamming into cars and he could avoid them. But he actually starts to live the life of the chicken, where as he's holding up and hits a car, he goes, oh! And he gets through and he goes, wee! He's actually completely not even playing the game the way we would normally think of it. He's in fact getting some other reward for playing this game altogether. Like he's just getting the enjoyment of vicariously living what it would be like a chicken racing across the road trying to avoid cars. I don't even know, but somehow I think it's actually kind of important though. I think it's kind of important that he's able to subvert the rules of the game and say, I don't really care about the whole game, that I get points for crossing the road. I'm just going to do this other thing. Okay, so there are sort of three big challenges, I think, to being able to get AI systems that can cope with these kinds of games. One is that second problem I mentioned, knowing what you control. How do we figure out what on the screen is even under our control? We need more guided exploration. We need to know how do we play these games before we understand how they work. And my son, when he was playing that first game, was actually trying to figure out, well, what happens when I press the button? What happens when I walk on this platform? He was sort of systematically going through, how does this game work? And then the last one is, we're going to need systems that have their own motivation, that seek out their own goals while they play the game. So let me just talk about one of these. There's one research project that we've done on this idea of knowing what you control. And I'm not going to show you the details of how we did it, but I just want to show you the results of what could the system learn. So this is again that the submarine game, but now there's these white boxes around that saying, I think I control these pixels on the screen right now. And the red dot is saying that's the center of who I think I control. Now you take a game like ice hockey, which my son actually had trouble figuring it out, and you can see that the red dot is sitting on the blue player or the yellow player, and even switches as the control actually switches. So the system can learn which side is actually from. Now it's not perfect. There are lots of weird games in the Atari space. So you can guess that you're sort of controlling that yellow thing. But if you notice there's a white box around these two things. These two things are your life markers. They tell you how many lives you have left. But for whatever reason, the designers of the game decided they should flip direction based on whichever way you're currently facing. So the system says, I guess I control those two, and then can't figure out where it is on the screen. But so it has some issues, but it actually does quite well. But the cool part of that is knowing where you are on the screen, not surprisingly, is really important to playing the game well. So the system on the left actually knows where it is on the screen and uses that information as it's learning to play the game, and this is the result of learning afterwards. Because it knows where it is, it can fly much faster. It of course lasts much longer and gets some information. Now, I don't know if you saw, so Atari games were originally, while I originally studied at our lab, we put out this piece of software, let anyone look at them. And some of my alumni out of my lab went to DeepMind And they actually took sort of the AI systems that we had started and took them to a much further level, combining them with this notion called deep learning. And they've actually built systems that can compete over with humans on over half the games in the Atari space. I think they're now up to almost 80%. They're competitive with top. I shouldn't say top human players. They're competitive with sort of the average human player. And 4 of the first 6 authors of this paper. Okay, so we do know how to do some of these problems. We do have a good grasp of figuring out what we control. We're still working. The hard problems that are left in the Atari space have to do with this guided exploration problem. And how do we explore in complicated spaces to explore. I want to wrap up by just showing one more video of what I think is one of the hardest problems facing AI. And I think if we can overcome this challenge, we're going to be able to go much further than where we are right now. And I want to illustrate it by showing you my son playing a game, and then I want to show you one of the AI systems. So the game being played here is the game Atari Tennis. So the game works maybe the way you expect it to. You were actually the red player on top. You press the button to serve the ball. My son will be here in a second. And the computer opponent, so there's no one controlling the blue, it's controlled by the computer. He runs over, hits the ball, hits it back, and then you have to move in position to push the ball and hit back. So you have to move to get to the ball, press the button to hit the ball, and hit it back. And so the computer opponent in this game is actually really challenging. It's actually very, very hard to score points against it, as my son figures out. And I think like in the entire course of the 5 minutes he played, I think he scored like 1 point the entire time. Even though he gets a long ball, he's in, eventually the computer opponent gets past it. Okay, so this is the game. This is my son. This is our Atari agent. In fact, this is the best known Atari agent for playing the game of tennis. So we watch the whole game. It's very exciting. There's no timer because this was before really there was any sense. No one cared about like timing things or like timing anyone out. You'll just sit here. This is the end, by the way. This video goes for another 15 minutes. Of the ball just sitting there bouncing. The computer serves the ball, realizes that it's going to get scored on, and figures out how it can stop that from happening. He gets a much higher score than my son. So, but of course, at the same time, we look at this and go, that's insane, right? Like my son is actually, as my son continues to play and develop skills at volleying in the game, develop skills at potentially being able to score points, all of those things we look at and go, wow, like he's learning a lot. At the same time, he's nowhere close to the skill level, in some sense, of that agent who hasn't learned a thing other than don't press the button. That's the last thing you should do. And so what's the difference? What's the problem with this agent? And the agent doesn't actually ever experience boredom, right? That's the key missing piece. My son would never do this because he would be bored, even if he knew that was the right thing to do. We don't let ourselves do this, right? When we find some impossible problem, even though we can't solve it, we will still bash our heads against that wall because the alternative is boredom, right? And right now, our agents, our computer programs, they never get bored. They will happily just accept that I'm just going to sit here and not push the button. You told me to get points. This is the best way to not lose points. So the one thing, let me just wrap up and say this for the parents in the audience. The next time your children say I'm bored, just make sure you remember that's the reason they're so smart. Right? It might be frustrating at the time, but that's the property that we still can't figure out how to get our AI agents to do, and that's what makes us special. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this wonderful talk. So let's invite some questions and comments.
On the last example, your son's playing the tennis game has a huge amount of prior knowledge about how games work that the computer does. So how do you deal with that?
It's true. Right now, the way the AI community is dealing with that is to then give our computer agents far more time to play them than the humans get to. So sort of state-of-the-art results in the Atari space involve computers that an equivalent amount of time they play is 1 full month straight in Ghost Computing. So that's how they get to sort of human-level performance where the human is sitting down and plays it for like an hour. So the other question is that I'll say is that it's not obvious that, so in the game of tennis, I think there is obviously some human knowledge that comes in. But sometimes the human knowledge is maybe counterintuitive. So you take the submarine game, and you might think, oh, well, like, you know, the human's going to see fish and submarines, it's going to know all about what's going on. Except for, if the submarine hits the fish, the submarine dies. Because that's how it works. And if the submarine shoots a fish, then you get points. Because that's how it works. If a submarine hits a diver, that's good. And what was the other one? Oh yeah, if you go to the surface when you don't have any divers yet in your submarine, you die. If you have a diver, you lose one, but then you get full air back. If you have a full complement of all 5 divers, you get a whole bunch of points. None of this makes any sense at all. So I actually think that probably, in that case, all this prior knowledge probably isn't helping us get back to it. But you're right, in some of the games it definitely is a useful piece.
Other questions?
As I'm sure you know, the physics of why a curling stone curls is actually pretty controversial.
It is.
In a few words, can you say how your physics engine solves the physics of the curling stone?
So I've gone down the rabbit hole of why, because I just thought when I first started the project, we would just implement from first principles. How hard can this be?
That's what I thought too.
Yes.
That must be true.
And none of that's true. Our system works like under the following physics principle. I hear some physicists think this is inaccurate. But, there are angels who walk beside curling rocks, and they push them sideways. And this explains a great deal of the phenomenon, because if the rock goes quickly, the angels can't keep up. And that's why it doesn't curl as much. They also, the way they hold their hands is why it's one way or the other, because they can't keep up with the spinning rock. So we have a fairly accurate model underneath.
That was fantastic.
No, it's just the angel theory. We haven't published it yet, but we're working.
So, great presentation. Thanks very much. I'm curious partly about the learning path. You know, algorithms used along the way, but I guess really where I wanted to get to is suppose you had 4 well-trained AIs playing against each other, and they knew all 3 levels that you're talking about. What type of game would you then predict?
If I understand your question right, for example, we can take our perfect poker player and have it play against itself. And the result is unsurprising. It essentially breaks even.
Thinking about in the Atari game machine where you had all 3 levels all the way through motivation. Suppose you
Sure.
get all the way through motivation and you have 3 or 4 AIs playing against each other. What sort of game would that look like?
So what I was trying to illustrate with the poker example is just say it looks like two really good poker players playing against each other. Now in the Atari space, most of the games don't actually have a 2-player mode, or maybe about half of the games do. Many of them are single player. We're mostly treating them as single player. If you did take the multiplayer versions and then have 2 well-trained agents play against each other, I think it would just be like the poker example. You know, if you were playing a game of Pong, for example, then there would be very long volleys with both sides not messing up.
Yeah, I was just wondering as a behaviorist, whether there would be a distribution on motivation that you would assume across the AI that you then apply.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean, if we get all the way to the point of whatever boredom looks like, then would we get agents that maybe even just quit, right? Like they're just like, all right, like you know, neither of us are better than the other person. There's nothing I can learn from playing against you. Maybe it's time to go look for someone else to play. I mean, it'd be awesome if we could get to that point. Right now, what I suspect the way our systems work is they would just play each other to a draw and be happy to do that. Let me point out another completely different experiment way back. This is 13 years ago, a robotics experiment that I did, where I was having 2 systems learn to play against each other. And the way it worked was there was 2 robots. They're actually very small robots, only about this big. They move very fast. And the 2 robots, one robot was just trying to get to this spot over here, and the other robot was just trying to like get in its way. It's like you're walking down the hallway and you know you do a little dance sideways and try to get around somebody. Except for this time, the one robot, that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to stop you from getting around it. Except for neither one knew how to do this task. And so they both were learning simultaneously to, one was trying to figure out how to get around, the other one was trying to exactly step in front. And the way the system was set up was because of the latency of robots, if I start going one way and then I head back the other direction, this robot won't see quite right away, so I can actually figure out how to get around. And in fact, this robot, maybe they should guess before they see me move that I'm about to switch directions, and they should start moving. So it became this funny sort of, very sort of guessing game as to which side someone was going to go to. Early learning experiments resulted in the following behavior, where the one robot would indeed go like this and head the other direction and go around it, and this agent seemed to just let him go. I was like, what's going on? Like, something's really broken. And the way they actually had two separate, because they were separate robots, they had two separate views of the world. They actually had learned a policy where they both convinced themselves that they had won. So the one robot thought, no, I actually tagged him. The game's over. Meanwhile, the other robot was like, nope, you didn't tag me, and ran to the center. And they both said, yep, I won. And so they actually found this sort of joint policy where they could both declare victory. And I was like, no, that wasn't what I wanted to do at all. So maybe in a more sufficiently complex task, maybe not quite the Atari games, you might find interesting, even cooperative behavior about how we can work together to achieve our goals together.
Do you see a role for personalities in different players in games? For example, curling teams might have certain strengths and weaknesses, and certain strategies might be correlated amongst within players.
Yeah, so one of the things that we want to build into the curling system is to understand the unique skill differences of the players that are playing. Maybe one player is really good, one player in your team is really good at takeouts, and maybe they sit third. And that's going to actually factor your whole strategy, right? Like you might delay a particular takeout if your second is throwing it because you want to wait for your third to throw it. But it also should affect the other team too, right? The other team should then be playing, knowing that you're going to favor certain shots at certain points of view. And you should know what skills your opponent team has, and all of these things factor in together. So I'm not sure, I typically don't put that under the category of personality, but maybe that's a good way to think about personality, is that it manifests itself as the result of how you want to act when you know that you have certain advantages and disadvantages as your own ability to execute actions in the world. I think it's important if you're playing a multiplayer game to think about how the other players in the game are going to be playing. And some of that's going to be motivated by their skills, and some of that might just be the tendencies they have. So an important part of our poker playing programs is exactly to model, how does this person play? Are they really aggressive? Are they really cautious? And we need to take advantage of the mistakes they're making, so we want to model them that way. Yeah.
What are the greatest obstacles that you have for further development in this field?
I think that, I can think about them in sort of silos, but I think if I were to pick one that's overarching across everything, I feel like getting a handle on what motivates us. Because right now our systems, all AI systems, you basically give them a goal, and they sort of optimize that goal. And so this idea of talking about boredom was to say somehow we as a system don't really seem to be optimizing what seems to be the thing we should be optimizing. We seem to be optimizing something entirely different. And I think if we can get a handle on that, then I think broadly speaking, we'll be able to build much better systems. Something that just wants to learn games, wants to learn how to play things, wants to discover things, as opposed to being told maximize points, and that's what it can do. In individual areas, I think like in the poker problem, right now one of the challenges is no limit. And so if you're a poker player, there's a huge difference between these two games, and it mainly comes from the possibilities that you can choose from and the possibilities your opponent can choose from. Now when they make a bet, unlike in limit, it's not a fixed amount. They can choose any bet size they want to. And I have to understand when I should be making those bets and understand what it means when my opponent makes all of those bets. And so that's where the big challenge is can we take the same result from heads-up limit and get it into this much bigger space of limit.
So I'd like to thank you for a very engaging talk. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.